goes on. And there's the thumbs up. So welcome, Ben Coe. I just can hardly believe that we've had a haboob alert on the most exciting night of this week. But the good news is that the dust storm's supposed to be over by 8, so we have to hold them for 58 minutes and then they can drive.
Okay.
Right?
I will try.
All right. Use your
I
microphone.
think it's an allegory that I roll into town and this big tornado. Did I roll into town and a big tornado of dust just swirling out of the
It's
sky?
a haboob.
Yes.
Yes.
Symbolic.
It is. Well, not this time because you actually went east rather than to the desert. Last summer we were doing an event for Daniel Silva, and just as we got Gabriel to Marrakesh in Morocco, every phone in the room went off with a dust storm alert. Thought Daniel would leap off his chair. He had no idea when we all said, "Oh, it's a haboob," and he was going. And we said, "Perfect timing because we're in Morocco, right?" So,
Yeah.
I know. There we are. Anyway. Fabulous job, North Korea. If only your scenario were actually true.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Oh, always a pleasure.
Every thriller writer and probably every mystery writer loves the Poison Pen and loves Barbara. So, and I'm count myself in that group. So, thank you
These
for
are the
having
people.
me.
You're welcome. These are the people you should love. I'm just,
No, and I
the
well,
channel.
well, I love them too. They know that. I say thank you to them by trying to put my best effort into my work. You know what I mean? But,
So this book's a little bit late. Was it a little trickier too? So you've been coming out in June the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think that my editor would probably ascribe that to me, and perhaps there were some deadlines that were missed along the way.
I'd like to attribute it to the thoroughness of your research and the brilliance of your imagination.
Thank you.
You're entirely welcome.
No, it is a little late. It's different because it's just a different month, and I don't know how that will equate to sales and stuff like that. I do think a lot of people during July, especially right now, are go on vacation and stuff like that. I don't really, however, I go on book tour because it's fun. I like going to see the bookstores that are that really work hard to sell my books, and then most importantly, I go to see the people who, even though they might be on vacation or they could be on, they will come to see me. So and it's there's something about seeing people in different parts of the country who like your stuff, and it makes it really really fun. I remember last year in Florida, there was a guy who drove 6 hours, and then he was going to drive back that night. And I said, I was like, this guy was like 8 feet tall too, and I was like, I will pay for a hotel room for you. And he was like, nope, I'm driving back. This is my annual ritual. So anyway, that's why it's fun to do. Whenever it is, I would. It's enjoyable to go out, and then bringing along. I brought along one of my kids, I think, every time, and that makes it even funner. In a way.
So just before you came in, a longtime customer, I thought had driven over here from California where he moved. And I'm delighted to say he's moved back to Phoenix nonetheless. Patrick, I thought it was a real tribute briefly to Ben that you had actually driven here from, where was it, Sacramento? Wow.
Well, it felt like it just coming from Mesa.
I'll bet it felt like it in the dust storm. Right. Well, anyway, tell me what interested you in deciding to write about Kim, the third of his name here. And you have to sort of look him up. This is Kim Jong-un, right?
Jong-un, yeah.
Jong-un, as in moon?
Exactly. So I had wanted to write a book that took place in North Korea for some time, since for some reason during my second book, which was a long time ago, Coup d'etat, ever since then I wanted to write a book that took place in North Korea. The challenge is, how do you put a character in North Korea and make it feel to the reader authentic and believable? Yes, you could do something that involves, all right, he comes up, stalks in on the shore, and weaves his way through. But that always felt kind of contrived. In other words, I wanted a way to get Dewey to go to North Korea that was believable, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. And then I figured it out. I figured it out. And so can I tell a little bit about the blood?
It's the first part of the book, so you can certainly talk about the setup, which I think is electrifying and sort of one wishes. But no, I don't want to say that. That would be cruel of me to wish that the man actually were that ill.
Yeah, well, so Dewey wants to leave the CIA, but at the same time, a couple of things happen. The CIA develops intelligence in which they learn that the head of the Korean People's Army, so the top military official in North Korea, that he is going to Macau, and he's going there for one night, and they design an operation to kill him while he's there. At the same time, a new character is introduced, so I think it's going to be a recurring character, but her name is Jenna Hartford, and she is an MI6 architect, meaning she is someone who designs operations, doesn't go into the field, but she's considered brilliant. Her husband, long before the book, was blown up by a car bomb intended for her in London, and so she's kind of burnt out, and MI6, because she's so talented, the head of MI6 is basically like, calls the head of the CIA and says, I've got basically Michelangelo of architects, and she needs a change of scenery, so we're going to send her over there, which is what she does. And she overhears this operation to kill the general, and she's like, are you guys crazy? Why just kill him? If you just kill him, Kim will just simply put someone else in there. And he's killed dozens of generals over the years. You're not going to have an impact on him. And if anything, you're going to expose the fact that we found out this intelligence that the general is going to be in Macau. So she designs an operation, she kind of takes it over and designs an operation to go into Macau, and with a designer poison, a one-off poison that only has one antidote, to poison him. And the idea of the antidote is, and a CIA chemist does it, it takes 24 hours to kill. And the idea is poison, and then tell them what we want, which is we want all the nuclear secrets that you have, and all your military capabilities, all that kind of stuff, and then we will tell you where the antidote is. They pre-planted it inside Pyongyang. And so he can either choose to essentially commit treason to North Korea and give them the information, or die. So the toxin is designed because if you just poison someone with a needle and nothing happens for 24 hours, I'm not sure anyone's going to believe it, right? So there's a component designed into this poison that causes a sharp spike and fever in the first hour in order to basically tell General Yong-sik that we mean business. We know what we're doing, and either you're going to die or you're going to send us the information. So it spikes, goes down, and then by hour 20 it starts to ratchet back up, and then you die. And Dewey has quit the CIA, but they don't have anyone else who they feel can do it. And so the president actually goes up to Castine, Maine to convince Dewey to do it. One last mission.
Is this J.P. Dellenbaum?
Yes. And he convinces him. They have a little bit of a physical confrontation, but he convinces him, and so Dewey goes over there. And Dewey is going to, and by the way, at the same time, you, the reader, are also aware of the fact that Kim Jong-un has cancer. He has, and this is true, he has things like nuclear triggers, and they know how to, develop highly enriched uranium. The one thing they don't know how to do, it actually is build a reliable fuel cycle for an ICBM, which a lot of people in the military intelligence world thinks is kind of comical, because that should be easier. That is technically easier than building what they're able to do, which is build a nuclear bomb. So he, at the same time, is cutting a deal with Iran, where he's going to trade triggers and HEU for a couple of ICBMs, and because he's dying of cancer, he's going to go out and light up a couple of cities in the United States. So Dewey goes over to Macau in this operation. He poses as a blackjack dealer. The general gambles alone, as a lot of people do over there in his suite at the Mandarin in Macau. And the idea is that, and the poison is in a vial attached underneath the table. And he's older. Young Sik is in his late 50s, but when Dewey goes to do it, Young Sik fights back, and he is a highly talented fighter, martial arts, and they get into just a brutal battle. Ultimately, Dewey beats his ass, but in the confrontation, at one point, the needle pricks Dewey in the chest. Just pricks him. Nothing. He doesn't hit it. Doesn't hit the plunger, but it pricks him. And so, I don't know. Do authors ever read anything?
You can if you want. Sure. We have a copy. There we go.
So, it's a very short chapter, but, well, it depends. Do you guys want to hear? So, after Dewey succeeds in poisoning General Young Sik, he goes back to his hotel in Macau, where he's going to take a shower, change, and go to the CIA jet that's waiting for him at the airport. Okay? And so this is what happens when he gets back to the hotel. Do you guys want me to read that or no?
Yes.
Okay.
You can just speak. It's hard to hold the microphone.
Yeah, you guys can hear me. I don't know
You
why.
can just speak. Well, it's actually the microphones are for the phone, but
Oh,
that's all right.
all right, hold on.
People on Facebook, too bad if you can't hear him. I'm sorry.
I can also talk while you're. Do you want to?
No, you don't need to talk. You can just look. However, I will say that I thought that the research that you did before you start reading, tell me about the research you did with Kim's genetic makeup and so forth, because I thought you made a really convincing case for why at a very young age he would be stricken with cancer.
A lot of people have asked me this, and which is, how real is the information regarding, as it regards to Kim's condition, not only cancer wise, but as it relates to him in the book. I don't know if anyone's read it yet, but it's, he drinks a ton. He can't go to, snorts cocaine, he does drugs, he is a complete lush, and how much is that of that is true. And what I would say is that I believe, based on my research, that all of that is true. That I think I've nailed Kim in regards to how he acts, behaves, and also his heavy reliance on alcohol and drugs. I think that's it's not a known fact, but I think it's a known fact in certain circles, and one of the people who I think knows that is somebody who's a source of mine. So that's why I think he's like that. I mean, that being said, even if I made it up, I would still be glad with the portrayal of it, but I think it's very real.
Well, part of it's lifestyle, but what I thought was the most interesting was sort of like Ancestry.com. When you go back and look at, the potential genetic weakness, because his family, they're interbred.
So the medical stuff at the beginning, yeah.
I thought that was really intriguing.
Yeah. That stuff where, so at the beginning, a team of French, I don't know if you call them, cancer doctors are brought in to assess Kim. And yes, so that stuff, actually, I had to talk to some cancer specialists about that. And all that actual verbiage when they're debating what he could have, the two doctors, that's actually true. It's not made up words, because it sounds, some of the words sound kind of
well, but
crazy.
you talk about decaying DNA from somebody whose parents are too closely related and so forth. And I thought that part was really fascinating. I mean, the more we're learning about genetics and DNA, the more
thank you.
The more we can kind of blueprint the course of people's lives. Then you add his lifestyle to that. It's not a healthy recipe.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so do you guys want to hear this?
Sure.
All right, I'll take the mic so you don't have to do it.
Okay. Chapter 28, Grand Hyatt Hotel, Macau. Dewey returned to his suite at the Grand Hyatt. He went into the bathroom and took off his shirt. He leaned into the mirror and examined the spot where the needle had hit him. It was barely visible, only the tiniest of red marks, like a mosquito bite. He took his phone and punched in a 3-digit sequence. #8+. He hit send. The message would convey a simple fact. Yang Sik has been poisoned, and the ultimatum spelled out. Operation successful. He stripped off his pants and climbed into the shower. He took a long, relaxing shower, gradually lowering the temperature of the water from warm to tepid and finally to cold as the hotel could offer. It wasn't Maine cold, but it was cold. He was trying to cool down and stop the sweating from the fight. Dewey finally climbed out of the shower and dried off with a towel. He stepped to the mirror. His face was even redder than before. Soon his dry face was wet again as he started sweating. He stared into his own eyes in the mirror, then glanced down at his chest, registering the small red mark where the needle had accidentally dragged. It had only been a few minutes, and yet the red mark was no longer small. It had spread out and was the size of a quarter. The redness was turning into a deep purple. The colored area was also elevated, puffed out a small bit from his chest. You didn't press it. It's not possible. You injected it all in Yang Sik. He told himself it hadn't happened, yet his eyes couldn't look away from the growing purple patch on his chest. He took his phone and opened a proprietary agency application called Vision, designed to enable the phone to conduct a number of basic diagnostic medical functions. The screen lit up and he pressed an icon shaped like a square, then placed the phone's camera against his neck. A few moments later, the phone made a low beep. Dewey looked at it. Heart, 149 beats per minute. Blood pressure, 244/165. Temperature, 105.2 Fahrenheit. Dewey stared at the screen an extra moment, then hit his phone. A dull monotone came on and Dewey spoke. 21. A second later, a voice came on the line.
Andreas, said a man. What's the problem, sir? I need Jenna Hartford immediately, said Dewey, walking slowly, indirectly toward the bed. Hold, sir. Dewey sat on the edge of the bed. Suddenly the room was reeling, spinning around, and he felt unbearably hot. Dewey, came Jenna's aristocratic British accent. We received the message. Excellent job. Dewey fought to hold on to the phone. It wanted to drop to the ground. Jenna, Dewey said calmly as he could. How much of the poison does it take to infect someone? Why? Did you not hit him well enough? Don't worry, we'll know soon enough. In fact, we know Yang Sik's jet was just powered up at the airport. He's getting ready to leave. The words were meaningless to Dewey as he fought to remain lucid, despite the sweat that now poured over his body and the fever which had gripped him in a noose. Please just answer me, said Dewey. Oh, right, a drop, a fraction of a drop. Why did I need to inject an entire vial? Insurance, said Jenna, but in case all you could do was nick him, even then his goose would be cooked. What are the first signs, said Dewey, already knowing the answer. Fever, a sharp fever. It was manufactured that way. That way Yang-sik knows the toxin is real. It stops after a few hours. He has time to retrieve the documents, then it kicks in again in case he has second thoughts. Dewey slipped off the bed, landing on the floor. Dewey, said Jenna, are you still there? Is something wrong? The sound of Jenna's abrupt pain moan hit Dewey's ears. Dewey, she said, you've spiked a fever, haven't you? Yes. How bad is it? I'm okay. What's your temperature? 105, but that was a few minutes ago. I'm about to lose consciousness. The phone went quiet. Jenna? I warned you, Dewey, said Jenna. Why don't operators ever listen? I told you. I made it so clear. There's one antidote. It's in Pyongyang. Can't they make another? Not in time, said Jenna. It was a proprietary strain, a one-off. We needed to be sure Yang-sik couldn't simply walk into a hospital and take care of it. Slowly, Dewey leaned down toward the carpet. The lights in the hotel room were still on. He was naked. He held the phone to his ear as he felt the first spike of deep, flu-like chills in his spine and neck. Dewey, if you're still listening, you don't have an option, came Jenna's soft, polite but firm English voice. I need you to get to the airport. Why? Because you're going to need to go to North Korea. You'll need to get to Pyongyang. It's that simple. If you want to live, you must find a way to get to Pyongyang. In the meantime, you have precious little time. Can you stand up? Dewey lay on the ground, his body shivering and convulsing. I'll try. I'll have a plane ready by the time you get there. Just stand up, get dressed, and get a cab to the airport. Can you do that for me, Dewey? Dewey tried to speak, but felt his hand shake, and then came numbness, a horrible sense of dizziness, and the phone dropped to the floor. He heard Jenna's voice shouting for him from the phone, but he couldn't move. She was shouting something, her words coming through in painful bursts. He shut his eyes, awakening a few minutes later to the loud, insistent sound of his phone beeping. He felt as if his entire body was on fire. He shut his eyes again as he fell into unconsciousness.
Yeah, that's where we laid him. Whoa.
That's good.
Is it good?
Pretty propulsive to getting to North Korea there, where you haven't planned to go, right? You devil. Wow. So, one of the characters I liked the best in the book was, in fact, Kim Jong-un's mentor. It was really a great character, and he goes all the way through the book. We can't say much about him, but when you read it, I think...
Yang-sik.
Yeah, you'll find him, right, very interesting.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, originally he was just the general,
Right.
but for some reason in the writing of it, the whole idea of him being someone who had worked, like the one person that Kim hasn't killed when he's been mad, who worked for his father, so he's older and has respect for him, and he treats him like shit, but he's the only person that Kim really relies on. And what I tried to get at was the conflict, and at one point Yang-sik remembers feeling, because he knows he's dying, he knows that Kim is dying, and he doesn't show it, but he feels like he's his father, because his father has been gone since he was a kid, Kim's father. And so Yang-sik kind of feels that way, and yet he could never really show that, So I thank you for saying that. I worked hard on creating a multi-dimensional character there who, he's really the fulcrum of the book, because his sending the documents are what enable us to discover their nuclear plans. And he's got this moral quandary: am I loyal to Kim, or do I love my country? Because he knows if North Korea launches 2 missiles on, God forbid, LA. I may have even said Phoenix in there. Although I did have kind of a blast area that, like, it kind of blew around the poison pen, so poison pen doesn't get hit. But he knows that the United States will wipe out North Korea. And in fact, you also, I think, go behind the scenes at the White House, because I think that is what would happen in that circumstance. So,
it's just too hard to say what would happen at the White House with any certainty, so let's not go there. I was thinking of you today because there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about Macau, which, when Rob and I went there in 1997, was still Portuguese. And there was very little in the way of gambling and high rises and all. It was still pretty much a very low functioning economy. And we had lunch in a Portuguese restaurant, went to visit a shrine by the ocean. Oh, it was absolutely wonderful. Right, and I've never really wanted to go back because I liked it that way. Anyway, it's been transformed into Vegas, but under this new anti-corruption regime going on in China, it was made clear today, at least in this article, they're going to try to really turn it into Vegas, cut way back on the gambling to reduce the corruption, and instead boost the entertainment factor, so it'll become like floor shows, and
I read that
long
too.
term.
I read that
And I
article too,
thought
yeah.
that was so, that was fit right in with your book in a way, But it's fascinating to see. I mean, it's only been 21 years since Macau evolved from what I saw it to where it is, and now they're talking about changing it up again and turning it into something like Vegas. It's a hydrofoil ride from Hong Kong. It's not a terribly long trip, so.
Is that how you got there?
Mhm.
In one of those things like the hovercraft? I've never been on one of those.
It was really great, and my husband almost threw me overboard because I had never actually seen a Jackie Chan movie, and they had, like a TV thing on the boat in case you were bored, and I was so riveted to the Jackie Chan movie, and also I forgot to look out, over the harbor and all, but so on the way back, he made me stand on the upper deck, so I would actually see the view, but it's a lovely place. It went over to Portugal, I think, after the British gave Hong Kong. Had to relinquish Hong Kong. I think it was like 99 for Macau and 97, or can't remember the years exactly, but it was Portuguese just a little bit longer. So I was amazed that it transformed, that quickly.
Yeah, it's, I'm trying to think if it's revenue-wise. I think revenue-wise it blows from a gambling perspective. It's in the book, I'm just trying to remember. I'm in the middle of my next book, so I forget my last book. That's one of the problems with the book tour. It's like you're out there like, oh man, I finished that thing like a year ago.
That's why I'm here.
It's like, what?
My role is to remind you of what you wrote. It's the truth.
But I believe Macau just is generates a lot more gambling revenue than Las Vegas.
In Vegas.
But I think you're right that I think Vegas generates more revenue, and that's to me what the article was about today, which is I think it's about the corruption and all that, but it's also about Las Vegas is now a really sustainable place that one could honestly raise a family there. There's professional hockey team. So gambling has, I think it's actually gone up, but not as fast. But they diversified it with a lot of stuff. And when you diversify, that also brings with it so many different things. I mean, more businesses, printers, bookstore. It's like, and I think that's what they're trying to do.
Restaurants. Vegas has become kind of a,
Yes.
a place for foodies because there's so many really expensive restaurants and
Great
so forth.
restaurants.
Yeah. So there we go. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting since your book was in Macau. If they ever opened up North Korea, it'd be intriguing to see how fast it would change. We went to Myanmar. I'm trying to remember how many
Really?
years. We were on the first
Wow.
cruise down the river from Mandalay to Yangon, and it was part of the reason we went was that all
When you say the first cruise,
the first river cruise of foreigners coming in. The
Wow.
generals had kept people out. And one of the reasons we went was the travel wisdom was that it would change so fast once it had opened up that you'd never get to see Yangon as, as it was. Unfortunately, with the Burmese, I'm going to call them Burmese because it's easier, what the Burmese chose to do when they moved away from Britain was they trashed all of the infrastructure. India kept it, so India had functioning railroads, and they kept the infrastructure and took over the government. But Burma didn't do that, so nothing worked. I mean, the buildings were in terrible shape. There's no train transportation. The whole thing was a mess. And then they built a city, like Brazil did, an artificial city to put the government in. So that made it even more complicated. And this is before Sue was released. Actually, I'm disappointed in her. I thought they would do a much better job, and especially versus the Buddha. I mean, who would have thought they were actually killer Buddhists? I mean, but so it is. So
it sounds like the name of a thriller. Killer Buddha.
Killer Buddhists. Well, if you look at the Rohingya.
Killer Buddha.
Yeah.
Actually, it sounds more like a Pixar animated kids
It
movie.
does, sort of. But thinking about North Korea, I mean, you have to ask, what would happen if they ever actually opened it up?
A little dark.
So,
What's that?
dark
A
one.
little dark.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, have you ever been to Tanzania?
Yeah.
Have you ever climbed Mount Kilimanjaro?
No, I haven't climbed the mountain. I was too old by the time I got there.
So Teddy back there just got back from climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
Awesome.
Wow.
Very impressive. Did the clouds part so you could actually see? Because a lot of the time it's completely wreathed.
No, once we got up there, it was just like clouds everywhere.
Right. Still, that's a great achievement. All right, did you have guides, I'm assuming?
Yeah. We had,
Why'd you want to do that? Just because it was there?
He wrote a line up. He just he tackled a line, tamed it, and wrote it right on up to the top. That's the Coes way. I'm like, you're not hiking up there. Go get yourself a line.
Is he talking to you like that all the time?
That's amazing.
I would have left you behind at the bottom and gone with the guy.
You would have too.
Yeah.
No, I would have been eaten by hyenas if I had gone on the trip with Teddy.
Good point.
He would have left me there tied to it like a coconut tree.
Oh, jeez.
That was a joke.
All right. So
They're no
now
coconut.
that you have been into North Korea and Dewey is survived. Spoiler, sorry, but he does actually survive, so there will be a book 9. Because you've already mentioned a recurring character, so I'm not actually giving anything away. Where do you anticipate going next? Since you're in the middle of writing it, you have to have some idea.
Well, actually, so someone that I don't know well, but I know, but who has been kind enough to give me advice is Michael Connolly. And I am writing the first book of a new series, but with with a character who is in most of the Dewey books, which is Rob Tacoma. And that series I'm in the middle of the first book on. I signed a new contract for that series too, and it's a domestic focused thriller series. It's about the Russian mafia, and the name of the first book, in fact, is The Russian. And if you if you have read my books carefully, you know that Rob Tacoma is fluent in Russian, and I think it's going to be really good. Essentially, the CIA creates a unit. The Congress gives the CIA authority because the FBI is not getting the job done in terms of Russian organized crime. They're not getting the job done, and that is made clear in the opening of the book when two things happen, which the Russian mob do and orchestrate, and Congress essentially gives the CIA authority to operate on U.S. soil for one specific purpose. And it's not all of Congress, it's a subgroup of Congress called the Incorporators, who 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats, who have the ability to essentially write legislation as long as they all agree on it. And what they do is essentially
just gone into fantasy.
well, actually, I'm not going to get into all of that, but I will say that there are aspects of how the country is set up in times of war and threat that you would not be aware of. Okay? It is part fiction. It is definitely, I've fictionalized it, but I think there are. Anyway, they give the authority to the CIA to create basically a kill team, not an investigative unit, a kill team, to go after Russian organized crime on U.S. soil. So, for the military, it's the Posse, you're a lawyer, Posse Comitatus Act, but for the CIA, it's a different act, but basically, they're not allowed to operate on U.S. soil. And
what's the difference between MI5 and MI6 and England? Same thing.
Well, yeah, and so I'm in the middle of that book, and Tacoma's involved in that. So that's the next one, and I don't know. I think that'll come out next summer, and then I'm going to try to write 2 books a year, so that I write a Dewey and a Tacoma, which is early on, I think, what Michael did. Brad Taylor's done it. I'm going to try to do it. I don't know if I can. The next Dewey book, though, has already been outlined, and that involves essentially a takeover of New York City.
Wow.
Someone takes over New York City. I actually think it would not be that challenging to do it based upon the strategy that is going to be in this book. I mean, it would be very hard, but there are ways to essentially isolate and cut off New York City. And it's done at a time when the president is at the UN.
Not at Trump Tower. Is that neutral territory, right?
Well, it's Dellenbaugh, so
That's true. There's no Dellenbaugh Tower.
He's at the UN making a speech, so he's trapped there.
That's a great idea. I hope they don't have you actually.
What? What'd you say?
Who's gonna rescue him?
Well, that's the thing. This one's is actually going to result in Dellenbaugh dying and Dewey dying, and it's very short. It's only like 25 pages. It's just you guys writing a book is not easy. I just need to just mail one in. So I'm thinking 25. It's like a pamphlet, big words. Everyone dies, and then we just hit restart and start something else. Yeah.
Right. So what advice did Michael give you?
He said that it was more about it's not so much burnout, but I asked him what it was like to have two storylines, and he said I highly recommend it. We talked a lot about like the New York Times bestseller list, and when he was there, he was like, I didn't hit it till my 8th or 9th book. There was no pressure on me. and now you young guys have all this pressure, and it was a long conversation. It was like at BoucherCon at this cocktail party. We were doing shots of tequila. No, I'm kidding. But but it was about not just, it wasn't so much the business of how to be successful. It was more like, how do you continue to enjoy it? And he felt that by expanding that way, it pushed him from a writing perspective, and it opened up kind of a new world, and it really helped him in terms of the joy he got out of writing. So that was more what it was about, what he recommended and stuff like that. And he's like, absolutely, it was. So that's what it was really about. If that makes sense.
No, it does make sense, and actually, you're about at the mark where a lot of people do this. It's usually books 6 through 8. It's a pattern that lots of authors go through. They write somewhere between 6 and 8 books in a series, and then something, they need to do something else, find somebody, another story. Oftentimes it's a story that comes to you that doesn't fit the characters that you have designed, and so you have to create a new batch of characters, and then one thing leads to another. Michael's actually taking the character he created last summer and pairing her up with Harry in the book that's coming out in October. So I thought that was an interesting thing, rather than writing 2 separate books about them this year. He's writing one book about the 2 of them together.
Got it.
So there are a lot of variations, especially if you keep them in a sort of broad universe, so that you're not leaving one entirely and stepping off into another one. So then you can actually go back and forth and do stuff like that.
And I think that in both books, in both series, I'm going to probably more heavily retain each, like in the Tacoma series, Dewey is going to be in this first book.
Yeah.
And Tacoma will continue to appear in the Dewey books. So I'm probably going to do that more heavily than I think Michael has done that, although I haven't read every single book he's written in both series, but I know you love Michael. I love his writing too.
Right.
It's only because of time that I haven't. He is my. I love reading his stuff, and I love reading Daniel.
Wasn't chastising you for it. I just meant.
No, but I'm saying like.
There's a mix.
I like reading him, and I like reading Daniel Silva.
Terrific writer. We had a really remarkable event with him in July, but it's also the other big shift is that thriller writers are going back to Russia and the Cold War. We're kind of leaving the desert, and Daniel's new book is about Russia. You're moving in that direction. It's really, I was actually getting tired of Desert Storm, so I don't mean the war, I just mean, being constantly,
Jihad,
but I would feel the same way if it were Bangkok or Chicago. I mean, it isn't because it's the desert or the Arab world, it's just that if you spend too much time with too many authors and too many in one location, you kind of go into overload. So it's nice to see a shift. But I also think that thrillers tend to reflect what's going on in the real world. So, everything says we're kind of shifting our focus again, towards Russia.
That's right.
Anyway, do you all have questions that you would like to ask Ben? Anybody have a question? Speak up. And this would be a good moment to say thank you very much for joining us on Facebook. And since our phones didn't go off, I'm going to assume that the dust storm has gone by. Or we'd have had another